All right, well, let's get going on this morning's agenda. So we're going to start off by talking about the Jackalope sitemap, the new sitemap that is replacing the old one. Essentially, the old one was just horrendously slow. It was using old technology, and it also was never fully finished. We sort of made the map, and it had about 50% of the functionality that we wanted, but then everything else started taking priority, and so we just sort of left it in its state, and it was what it was. And so it didn't interact very well with Jackalope in the sense that you couldn't change attributes, and you couldn't really use it very well as a selection tool, and it really wasn't compatible with the outside world either. You couldn't easily load new external layers in there or shape files or anything like that. So I'm going to show you today what's going to be available in the next production release, which is version 7. And that's most of the functionality that we need. And let me explain that a little bit more. So the design goals for the new map is it's much faster than the old map. We're using a new technology that makes it much, much faster to draw tiny little dots on a canvas. And we're using that technology. So it is much faster, and it is also more tightly integrated with Jackalope with regards to site selection. So if you click a site on the map, it does interact with the other Jackalope interfaces, or if you draw a box around a bunch of sites in the map, it'll go show up in Jackalope. Also, you can update site fields using the map. You can say, I want to take this route and change its, I don't know, factor group or something to something else, or add it to a new scheduler group or something like that. So there's actually interaction from the map back to the main Jackalope data store. And one of the big complaints with the old map is that you couldn't view reports. So you can view reports now and view data and all of the things. It's also compatible with external data sources. So if you have other layers that you want to consume, you can do that, as well as being able to incorporate other shapefiles into the map and even saving them for future use if you want to. And what I said shapefile, but I mean any geospatial file, like a KML file from Google or something like that. And lastly, we wanted to really have fine-tuned access controls that would even allow public access. And we're not quite there yet for a couple of reasons. Let's talk about what we will have in version 7. Version 7 is kind of an all or nothing approach where, well, in 2 tiers, a user can have access to the map at all or not at all, or they can have access to the map and not be able to do anything that effectively writes to the database. So they couldn't access the site attribute change, and they couldn't write huge shape files to the database. So those are kind of the 2, what we would call destructive activities that you can do in the sitemap, and everything else is pretty much read-only. We're storing things like state, like what the last layer you had up. That sort of stuff is going on. But that's not really what we consider a destructive behavior or something that could cause harm. So we're really isolating 2 main functions. Can you change site attributes? Can you write big shape files? And you can either have that access or something. Nope, someone's saying something. Nope. In version 8, we want to fine tune that further, but we really don't know what people want. We had an idea and we put it in the user's guide, but it's probably not enough. But we would like to be able to really fine tune what people can see, including anonymous public access. So if you want to post this map to your main DOT website or something, then we really need to dial in what you want to be able to restrict and what you don't want to be able to restrict. And that's probably going to require some meetings with all concerned parties. But right now, that sort of fine-tuned access is a little bit nebulous in our brains and what exactly it looks like. All right, so let's go and actually look at some stuff. Come on, there we go. So the new sitemap, and by the way, the old sitemap will still be available if you want it to. We're not replacing the URL automatically. I don't know, we would probably, you know, when we roll out version 7, I think it's going to be a state by state. You want to keep the old map or you want to use the new map? Keeping the old map might be something you want to do because it's something you're used to, basically. So, but it would just be in this same, you know, site admin, sitemap, opens a new window, and there we are.
And then
So,
Christy made a comment. She says a read-only role for the entire application would be nice.
For the entire web map, let me get up my thingy here.
For the whole thing, so that you could have somebody be able to get into any part of the application and just not have to micromanage their roles so much, but just say, you know, I would like it if people on my team could go into site admin and see stuff, but not change stuff.
Oh, so truly a global.
A true, right. I think there's a Jira for it, but it was like, yeah, that's like version, that's like a super new version, like a.
Yeah, that was like version 2 of Jackalope. I know the Jira she's referring to.
Yeah, I mean, because I imagine nothing's really private per se. You just want to restrict. Just with a single click, say, yep, you can see whatever you want, but you don't get to change anything.
And that really fits the whole, you know, we're public agencies, this is all public data. But when you can't give people access because they might ruin it, that's a real hard sell.
Yeah, that makes sense. For sure. Okay, so let me, and it sounds like we already have that as Jira, and it sounds like a good idea. So this is the new sitemap. I'm going to get into the details of layers and stuff first, but let's just talk here on the main page as I move stuff around. So what we're looking at here are a bunch of points. And sorry, Minnesota, you're always the victim because you happen to be my test database. So you can see it as much faster. I mean, what we just did, scrolling all the way out, would have taken minutes, literally minutes probably, in the old version of the sitemap. So we're able to quickly draw points, quickly render all these bad boys. And moving around the map is not this horrifically slow process. It paints pretty quickly. I say that right as it stopped painting. But it's much, much, much more responsive than the old one, which I think will make it much easier to use. With regards to site selection, we talked about that. It's going to be hard on one monitor, but bear with me. We were looking at CAT yesterday, the short-term count thingy. We don't have any sites selected right now. But you could, whoops, damn it, that's not what I want to do, Windows. But you could go through and, for example, draw a rectangle around a group of sites that you want. And now look over to the left of the site list. So you'll see how it went ahead and added those to the working stuff. That's because we have this link with sitemap on, and it goes both directions. So if you have a link with sitemap on and you have the sitemap open in another monitor, you could click over here. Well, it went behind, trust me. So look, you see how the sitemap's moving. So it goes both directions. You can, if you're over here and you're like, where the heck is that?
Somewhere else in this meeting. So
you can make sure that this is clicked and then navigate to that place on the map, or vice versa. You could draw rectangles or circles or whatever over here, and that will populate the things in Jackalope. So one of our primary goals was to make this a site selection and navigation tool, and that's how we've done that. Let's see. With regards to, I think, over here on these buttons, I did want to mention, yes, initially, when we set this up, it is all completely open source. So this is using a what's the name of it? OpenStreetMap base layer with an OpenStreetMap geocoder. Same call, right? So this is, not Google's search tool, not Microsoft Bing's or Esri's. It's the OpenStreetMap geocoder, which may or may not be as easy to use as what you're used to. The reason is we didn't want to get into licensing issues, but we can. So there are other base layers that you can use if you want to, but there has to be license keys and things like that. So just as a note, this is all 100% open source out of the box. You can change base layers, you can change geocoders, but that's just not the out of the box solution, FYI. And in terms of selection, you can select rectangles like we just did. You could do polygons, blink, 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 blink. You could do circles. I don't think you need me to. You can undo those because they're annoying, and you could move those, and you can line. You can edit those boundaries in many ways. You could move them, etc. Rotate them, and beyond. So this is kind of the basic map. What we're seeing right now. Any questions so far? Okay. So let's go over to this bar, which is where all the fun can be had. The first menu in the sidebar is about layers, all about the layers. The first is the base layer. So I just have this set to have some base layers, but this is where I was talking about you can get into proprietary stuff. Like you can have Esri's streets layer here, and that's fine, but we need to, if you're in kind of a production environment, we would need an Esri license key or something like that. Open or Mapbox is sort of a more open, although it is still a proprietary thing that allow you to do like satellite views, things like that. So the base layer is, we can have as many base layers as you want. I mean, if you have your own favorite base layers, they can be added. The basic thing is we're trying to avoid proprietary stuff out of the box. If it's proprietary, we'd want you to have a license for it. Does that make sense? Is everybody clear what a base layer is? So the markers are just there. They're geospatial coordinates. But underneath, what you're actually seeing underneath the markers, see how the markers aren't changing? That's the base layer. And that's what you can change here. In addition to the base layers, we have our own Jackalope layers that can be shown here, and they're basically two types. The first is what we call our marker layer, and that's these red S's here. The red S's means those are short-term count sites. If it was black, it would be a continuous site. But this is just an example of what we call the marker layer, which is you actually have an icon with a letter and a color representing what that thing is. And then you can have three other layers, Jackalope layers, that correspond to kind of like a clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. So for example, you could say, well, on the bottom of those bad boys, I want, what would be good? We're just gonna do station ID. Station or sequence number. So we've just said, okay, well, the bottom, we're going to just put the sequence number. So that 59757 is a sequence number. And then you could say on the right, let's put site AADTs. Sure, why not? So those site ADTs show up. And also importantly, I haven't discussed this, a legend for those also shows up. So these are different colors, as you can see, and based on the site ADT range. we didn't get a legend when we did the site name because, you know, it's just a text field, right? It doesn't have ranges. So only those things with ranges like k-factor or whatever are going to have legends with a corresponding set of colors. And then on the left, I don't know, functional class or location text. That's exciting. Location text probably should have been on the bottom because it's big. All right, so there we go. Then we have location text. So the idea being that you can make your map crazy, busy looking, which you're not going to do with these, technically these 4 different layers. Refresh. So those are the Jackalope layers here. I didn't mention also for the data layers, you can, like when we did site ADT, it was using the most current data. But you could also do %change, which will take the %change of the most current data to the penultimate data. Or you can pick one of the traffic years. Like if you just want to see, well, what was the site ADT in 2015, you could do that. And those are the Jackalope layers. And I wanted to bring up, there it is. In our white paper, which I think Catherine has sent out, it does have a list of all the layers somewhere in here. So come on, go faster. Yeah. I don't know if you can see all those, but so these are all the different things that you can put on your map. And it's in the white paper, and I'm certainly not going to go over each of these, but that's the information that you can put on. Heat maps right now is turned off because it's, but heat maps will be there for version 7. If you don't know what a heat map looks like, come on, let's go faster. So it looks like this. So for example, this Minnesota-shaped thing is a heat map of site ADTs. It gives you, where the site ADTs are hottest, or and where they're lowest. This is where you can store external shapefiles or Google Earth files. You just drag them over into this box. If you have the ability to write to the database, you will be prompted to put a save name in there. So you as an operator can store a shapefile in the database that you can then turn off and on by clicking this button here. If you don't have permissions, you can drag it in here and you'll see it, but the next time you come in, you won't see it. It won't be saved anywhere. Does that make sense? And then finally, you can add external layers, and this is all the information that you can use or add to, excuse me, not enough, apparently 1 pot of coffee wasn't enough. Enough information to be able to pull from an ArcGIS Rust server. So you can also make them global layers if you are the right permissions. So if you want to always see your traffic sections on this map, or always have the ability to click on traffic sections on this map, you can make it global if you're an administrator, and give it a name, give it the URL, and then these are all things that you can add to that to make it more fine-tuned. Okay, so that's the layer page. This is where you can control what you're seeing here. Any questions?
None in the chat. Oh, here's one, Rob. Search option for an individual site, ?
Yep, let's look at that next. Thank you for the segue, Rob. So the first, these, I may not have mentioned this, but so you have this toolbar over here and it's got 5 different options. The first is what we were just looking at, layers. And then over here, here's where you can search for, as Rob was just asking, individual sites. If I happen to know a sequence number, which I don't, I could enter it in here and I go to that. Since I don't know sequence numbers, I can just, so I know a bunch of them start with that. So when I hit 111 there, so sequence number begins with 1111. It goes to the first one in the list, but this allows you to zoom around the map and find all of the sequence numbers that begin with that. I'm in search mode. If you do this in filter mode, it will actually take away well, let's just do it. Go. So now in addition to our found sites, you're going to see it's going to refresh the map. And we're only going to see sites that have, let me make this smaller. Whoa, that is too far. So here, if you're curious, are all the sites in Minnesota that start with 1111. There's one way out here. So I'm going to do something. Come on. Come on. When you search, it zooms in, and it's sometimes faster just to search for something to get closer to the map. Let me just show you something other than sequence number. Sequence number is the active naming convention, so it's not as interesting. Let's do location text. Okay, just wanted to show you a couple things. So I just said location text begins with I. So let's do I-694. 694. Go. Okay, so here's all the Interstate 694 sites. You notice we're looking at this, actually what it's doing is it's sorting by the sequence number, which is Minnesota's primary key. If you'd rather have it sort by the what we're actually searching on, which is the location text, do that, uncheck this box, and now it's essentially reversed these. It used to say 70761 : the location text, and now it just basically switched that. So so this controls what the return sort order is. I want to mention something about this somewhat innocent looking set of controls here, the location text.
There's a question from Susie when you're done with that next segment there.
Okay. So I just wanted to mention in this little site control thingy is something, you'll see it later when we do roads and highways. We're trying to have a standard way of searching for sites that we can inject into any interface. So it automatically fills out your site metadata fields. It has things like site groups and scheduler groups. It also has data things. So if you want to search for sites that have a site ADT of less than 100 or something like that, class fields if you want to find out where all class 9s are, or all class 9 percentages or volumes of greater than whatever. This is a general, even though it doesn't look like it, these little fields here are a general control that we're going to be trying to put everywhere, potentially, not necessarily with, is there anything with a P? Not necessarily on 7, but probably, hopefully by 8, it will be everywhere, so that we just have a standard way of searching for sites. And right now, this is the basic mode where you just have, okay, I'm going to search for anything with a location text that begins with a P. The goal is to eventually have an advanced mode where it does this and you can combine. So I want to see everything in functional class urban with a site ADT of less or greater than 100,000, for example, and be able to combine search terms and save them to a particular user and then be able to pick from saved searches in the past. So just to be able to, this is a total aside here, just to be able to have a standard way of searching for sites and the ability to save search conditions. Okay, let me find the question.
Yeah, and Christy wants to know why the last two results popped up. They don't start with a P.
Oh, I've no idea. Maybe there is a hidden P there. I don't know. Because you're right, it shouldn't be there. It's a very simple query. It should be P thingy. I don't know. Is
it searching across all time breaks or just active sites?
It should just be active sites. I don't know. We'll have to look into that. I'm glad you found that. That looks like a bug of some form.
Susie asks, does OpenStreetMap dynamically update routes? So when a user accesses the sitemap, the base map displayed is the latest version?
Yes. Well, I mean, yeah, I don't know how frequently OpenStreetMap does their thing, but we're not caching the base map. We are always reading it. So that's why, yeah, I don't know, when you're moving around, you see how it fills in with tiles. I don't know if you see it as quickly as I do, but if on mine you see little tiles get filled out, those are the, that's the query to OpenStreetMap to get that particular tile. And I believe it's pretty current. We don't have to do anything to get the most current, and we just get the most current. So I think the answer, Susie, is yeah, we always display the latest version. And then Christy asks the P question. And then Susie says, so the search filter in advance is like build a query. Yeah, exactly. It's like building a query. We cheated and put it in our white paper if you want to see what we want it to look like. It's basically you build a query. And then importantly, you can save that query, and it'll be saved by the logged in user. So you will always be able to see it. Sorry. Yeah, so this is kind of over here, you would be able to save your searches / filters over here, and then, be able to build them. Okay. I don't see any more questions. If there are, just yell at me. So I have to minimize that thing. So that's searching.
Rob's saying, when did we say we were expecting version 7? And so Rob, the idea would be early 2022. So January 2022.
Okay. Under tools, this is the potentially destructive thing that that is protected by roles. So this is where you can draw a rectangle or something and see how many sites are selected and say, I want to move all these sites to, I don't know, a different scheduler group. And then you can change that here. This part is turned off right now, so I don't have to worry about anything. We're still debugging some of this. So it'll tell you which site, what the 7 sites are right here. And then you can save that. If you save it, it will update those 7 sites to the new scheduler group in this example, or if you cancel, it won't. So this is a way to change site attributes spatially, which we've been asked about for a very long time now. In addition, you can export the current map, that includes any annotations, things like that, to a shapefile that you could import into ArcGIS or whatever you use. If you have this option turned to yes when you hit the change attributes, it will prompt you for a date, and based on that date, it will create site splits. So if y'all remember what a site split is, It essentially creates a new version of the site, a new incarnation of the site with the new attributes. And then the old incarnation of the site still looks the way it did before the change. Okay. The next sidebar is when you click on a site, that's not very interesting. That's a little bit more interesting, is the marker information. And this tells you information about the marker. This is where you can get the data. This is where you can get the reports. Up here in this site info is the exact same site info control we saw yesterday when we were doing something. I don't even remember what we were doing. Probably cat, where you can go and change what site information you want to see up here, and it will save it by your user and by the UI that you're in. So you can have this like site control have different site attributes than the other one. And so this is saved by user. And then down here are is the actual data that you can see. So there's potentially three different tabs here. So site statistic tab will have these values here, either the site ADT, history, the single unit combo, D factor, K factor. We probably put peak in there too, but these are the site statistics are what we consider the official statistics for the site, which are only things that are produced from phase 4, the site ADTs, and the things produced from HPMS. So probably we should add peaks here now that I think about it. If you want to view actual count information, you have to either click the continuous counts tab, which is grayed out because we don't have a continuous count site selected, or the short-term count tab. And this will list, and this, by the way, is something we're actively working on, and it'll be here for version 7, but the various types of graphs that you'll be able to see here, including count ADTs, class distributions, speed distributions across time, and including the ability to flip between years. So this is something that's actively being worked on and will be part of version 7, is more graphs, always more graphs. And then down here, you could double click and get a report. I don't know why, but my database has like 5 copies of that hourly volume report for some reason. But anyway, and this will be based on data types. So if you're over here and you're looking at class, you would see your class reports. And this all changes when you click different sites on the map. And these are also going to be drill downs. So this is actually very similar to the way the old sitemap works. When you go to a continuous site or something and you're seeing the ADTs across time, you can click on that bar and then you'll see the MADTs, and you can click on the MADTs to see the daily volumes for that month, and you can click on the daily volumes to see the hourly distributions. Finally, unless there are questions, this is the administrator options, and most of this is not available for version 7. This is where we're going to be fine-tuning what exactly we need to be able to do. The only thing that's useful in here is this roles to be able to access as operators. And this will be a list of the roles that do the quote destructive things, the ability to update site attributes and the ability to store large shape files. So only those people will have access to those options. Everybody else will just basically have a view only, read-only view of the map. Minus, of course, like I said, state information, like when you go over here, and if I were to refresh right now, it would keep me at this point in the map at that zoom level, even though I refreshed. And next time, if I logged out and logged back in, it would still come back here. So, there's all kinds of hidden things that we store, but we're not considering those destructive. And then what this actually looks like when we have a fully functional access model is still kind of up in the air. What exactly does that look like? So, and we'll want to coordinate with you guys on that question, but that's for version 8. So, any questions? Any more questions?
I did have a question, and I don't know if you covered this and it went over my head, but everyone's using, I guess we would call it Google Maps with their site maps that I know of, except for British Columbia. They had one different, do you remember that? Their implementation was a different requirement. Does this change or impact them?
That would be the base map. I don't have Google listed here, but we could. I don't remember what BC needed. It might have been that they needed OpenStreetMaps because that's the one that doesn't require licensing. So essentially, out of the box, if that's true, what I just said,
John wrote that they're using Bing. That's
okay,
not
so,
that's not what I recall, but then John would know. So.
Yeah, so I mean, Bing definitely has a base map, and so for John, we would add that here, but we also have to add the licensing information. So just to give you an overview, so Christy says Google might have licensing. That is true. All of the base maps like Google, Bing, and Esri have licensing, but the ceiling, or what's the opposite of ceiling, floor of those licensings is really high. It used to be pretty low, but for example, I think for Google, you need to have over 25,000 tile loads per day before you get kicked into a tier that actually requires a license key and a way to bill you, essentially. And I think all of the base maps are similarly really high. Like, I can't imagine your average user, unless it's a public map, I can't imagine us hitting that 25,000 floor, generally speaking. So it's honestly perfectly safe to use something like a proprietary Esri Streets map or something like that, or Google or Bing, and you probably would never hit that. But just to be safe, if you are using the Esri or whatever, we also have a place where we need a license key, just so it's there. John says it might be Bing for our traffic data website and open source for Jackalope. It's still early, and I hear you, man. I need another cup of coffee. But that is the case, yeah. And if so, some people have enterprise license for Google, in which case, great, you can use the Google base map, and that's fine. We'll just add your enterprise licensing in. Any other questions?
I think we covered all the questions that had been inserted into chat.
Okay. Well, I just want to reiterate our design goals. I mean, my goal, like for version 2 of Jackalope, if we ever get there, just to be like we were talking about yesterday with the field collector app, having the map be the primary UI, basically. And I think this is a step in the right direction. You have your map on one screen, you get the other Jackalope things on the other screen, and you can navigate around the map. You can click over here, and it changes the appropriate thing over there. So this is a step in the right direction to that.